Now, another type of payment that we might want to model is what's called a balloon payment. A balloon payment is when a large sum is paid at the very end of the loan, effectively to pay it off in a big lump sum at the end. So while this isn't common in mortgages, you see it in some mortgages, but not really in standard mortgages. Where we do see this is in corporate bond markets. And there we typically see it as an entire repayment of principal, all occurring at the end. So for example, if a company borrows $100 million, they might routinely just pay interest payments on that. And at the end of, say, 10 years, they pay back that $100 million back as a balloon payment at the very end. So this is an important tool, not directly for mortgages, but for expanding our modeling set to think about corporate debt as well as kind of personal finance type mortgages. So in our model, right, we're going to build from the previous model. We still have our same kind of monthly extra payment. We can still add that in as before. But now we're going to add a balloon payment in. And so the assumption on the balloon payment is that this $100,000 is going to get paid off at the very end in the last month of the loan. So in this case, we have this 20-year loan, and we're going to pay $100,000 of extra payment off at the very end. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and incorporate that into our payment, just like we did before with the extra payment amount. The difference here is that we only want to add this payment in 1 month. So here we're going to use an if statement. And the if statement is going to say if we're in the last month, well, if the month is then equal to the total term, being sure to lock that, times 12. So 20 times 12 will give us that 240. If it is the 240th month, then also add in our balloon payment. Make sure we lock that. Otherwise, zero. No extra payment in the other months. Notice that we're still doing this within our min function that we had before. That's going to make sure that we don't overpay. All right, so let's add that in. Let's then drag this down and then hop down to month 240 and see what happens. Well, nothing happened. All right, we have no big balloon payment happening in our last month here. We're still paying it off in time. And that's because we are making sufficient payments over the life of the loan to pay it all off at the end of 20 years anyway. So where this balloon payment is going to help us pay off the loan at the end is if we haven't made those same payments on a monthly basis over time. So here we're going to start doing a little bit of guessing and checking. So rather than doing our calculated required payment, let's say instead that we paid, $200 less. So we could actually come over here and make our extra payment minus $200. So now let's go down and see what happens. Well, now in month 240, we see a little bit of a balloon payment, right? We're paying an extra $74,000 or so, and it makes sure the loan gets paid off. But we could have actually made less of a monthly payment every month and still ended up with that zero at the end. All right, so let's try this maybe negative $300. Let's see what happens now. If we go back down there, now we see that we didn't quite pay it off, right? We made our whole balloon payment. There's our extra $100,000 is coming in, but that wasn't quite enough to pay it off. And what happens? Well, we have to pay for about another year of making those $911 payments to finally pay this thing off, right? The lender might not be very happy if you end up, $10,000 short at the end of the term of the loan. So in this case, that's not going to be a good solution. So what we want to be able to do then is solve for what should this extra payment amount be, how negative should it be, to make this thing pay off just in time. So one strategy we can use is to use goal seek. So let's go up into our data menu, go to our what if analysis, and use goal seek. So we're going to set what cell? Well, we're going to set that balance at period 240. All right, that's the cell that we want to have equal to 0. We're going to do that by changing our extra payment cell. So once we've set that up, right, we want to change this extra payment until we see that this thing gets exactly paid off at month 240. So let's say, okay, let's run it around. It looks like the extra payment amount, and we can add a couple zeros here, is about $273. So let's go down and make sure that that's working. Well, the month before we paid $939.31. The last month we pay $100,939.31. So it looks like that full balloon payment's coming in, and our balance ends up at 0, and we have no more payments to make afterwards. All right, so here we used goal seek to make this work and find what this extra payment amount needed to be. All right, Could we calculate this kind of with a formula? Yeah, let's do that real quick. So we could come over here to the calculate the monthly payment. Here we can still use the payment function. Same rate as before. Number of periods is going to be the same as before. Present value, it's still going to be negative 200,000. But now we're going to use the fourth argument here, which is the future value argument. All right, this one's optional, but essentially we're saying that we get $200,000 at the beginning. All right, that's going to be negative. So at the end, we're going to pay an extra $100,000. So here we just need to reference that balloon payment. So if we do that calculation, we see 939.31, which is exactly what we solved for using GoalSeek to get that payment. All right, so you're not always going to know how to do the math formula to necessarily calculate this thing, which is why having GoalSeek as a tool for yourself to use is really important. So I want to give you a little bit more insight into how GoalSeek works. So the way we're going to see this is, let's say instead of an extra payment of negative 272, you start out with a negative payment of negative $100. All right, if you recall, the problem of making a negative $100 payment is while we get to zero at the end, we didn't make the full balloon payment. All right, so let's see if GoalSeek can help us out. So if I come back up here, we're going to go back into data, what if analysis, and GoalSeek. All right, we're still going to set that same cell equal to 0. Set it equal to 0 by changing the cell way up here, our extra payment amount. So hopefully it gets us back to where we were going before. Let's click OK. It got us an answer. And real quick, we can notice it didn't change the extra payment. So why isn't it changing the extra payment? Well, because we already have our target cell equal to 0, right? The way GoalSeek works is it says, if I'm not at my target, let's try to change the value a little bit smaller, a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left, a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, and see which way I get closer. And if I get closer that way, let's keep going in that direction. Here, because it's already at 0, it doesn't know which way to go, right? The solver is not smart enough to figure that out, so we have to know how it works. So notice if I change this to 101, so I negative 101, again, we see that same 0 value at the bottom. Nothing's changing. If, however, we start out at, say, negative 300, now we can go down here and say, oh, look, we're not quite at 0 yet. It's at 10,032. So let's remember that, 10,032.39. And if we come up here and make our extra payment just a little bit bigger, negative 301, now we see that we're at 10,399.16. So we actually got a little bit further away. So our extra payment's negative, which means we need to pay more. Let's actually see if we get closer by going the other way. Negative 299. Now we see, oh, look, I got a little bit closer to 0. Right? I'm going the direction I want. And this is what GoalSeek is doing, is it's randomly going through and basically testing a little below, a little above, and going whichever way gets closer to its goal, right, in the GoalSeek. So then we say, all right, well, let's make a jump. Let's go to negative 290. Did that help? That helped. It got us closer. We're still $6,000 off. So now we can make another jump. Let's do 280. All right, 2696. We're getting closer still. And it's going to iterate on this process of getting closer and closer. It might accidentally go too far, though. All right. Sometimes these solvers will go a little too far. If it's a good solver or a good GoalSeek function, it actually won't overshoot. In this case, we overshot by a few bucks. All right. If you remember, the answer was around 273. And so in this case, because we went a little too far, we're not going to get the right answer. But if we just turn this back to negative 300, again, this GoalSeek's pretty smart. So let's just do that same thing again. So let's go down here. There's our target cell. Set it equal to 0 by changing our cell way up here at the top. So since we started from kind of an area where we weren't already at our goal, it moved towards our goal by kind of going from 300 down to 290, 280, and finally 272.65 is where it decided to stop. And again, that leaves us with a payment that's exactly the same as if we would calculated that monthly payment. So it's important to understand how GoalSeek is working and how it's looking for solutions, because if you start at a solution that works, even if it's not what you want, it's not going to be able to find anything but that solution you gave it. So in this case, we have to kind of start from a place below where we want to be and move up to it or down to it, depending on which direction the goal seek is going to want to go.